my friends, to a new episode of CELTA Insider. And in this episode, my friends, we'll be talking about a CELTA assignment. We'll talk about Assignment One, which is known as Focus on the Learner. Right, so let's go through all the details in this assignment. And I will also answer a full assignment with you in this episode so that you can follow this as an example on your CELTA courses. So let's do that together. Let's go. So here we are, Assignment 1, Focus on the Learner, right? And let's first talk about this assignment in general. Let's go through the introduction. And in most assignments, you will read this introduction on the assignment page, right? So let's go. This is a very practical assignment. It is designed to help you develop insight into students as people and learners. That's why we call it Focus on the Learner, because this is what the assignment is all about. Right. You will choose a student and get to know him or her so that you can analyze their strengths and weaknesses in learning English. Fine. But let me say something here. It says here, you will choose a student. This happens in some assignments, but not all assignments. In some other assignments, you will be asked to analyze a group of students, not only one student, okay? But there is no problem. Either we go with one student or a group of students. Nearly, it's kind of the same process, right? So this is all about analyzing students' strengths and weaknesses in learning English. Fine. Right. Now let's go to this part here. You will need to choose a student from your current TP group. Now this is a very important part. A student from your current TP group. What does that mean? On a CELTA course, sometimes we have 12 candidates, and I mean by candidates, teacher students. And we divide those teachers into two groups, 6 and 6, right? Good. And for example, 6 candidates teach elementary students and 6 candidates teach intermediate students or other levels. So when I say a student from your current TP group, then you need to check first which my group of students is. Is it the elementary group or the intermediate group? Because in this assignment, you're going to focus on a TP students from your group. Someone might say, Shadi, is that so important? Oh my God, very important, because remember, in this assignment, you'll be kind of recommending activities and things like that. And these activities, if you have an elementary students, then these activities need to be appropriate for the elementary level. Not only this, also you're going to comment on weaknesses and strengths. And this has to be also in the light of the level. So that's a very important point. Right, now let's continue. And arrange a time to meet and interview him or her. So number 1, it's a student from your current TP group. And number 2, you need to arrange to meet and interview this student. And this is another step that you need to plan for. Right, good. Now, let's continue. During the session, record your conversation. You should ask them first. Okay, so record the conversation. Why? So when you interview this student and you're sitting like face to face talking about learning English and the difficulties that this student has and why he's learning English, why he's interested in this class and all that stuff, it is very important that you record, because if you don't record, you wouldn't be able to remember your students' mistakes in speaking. Right? Your students' mistakes in spoken grammar. Your students' mistakes in listening to you. So this is very important, right? So record the meeting and of course get permission first from this student. Like tell your student that I'm doing this because I need to analyze your spoken English and give you feedback on that so that you can develop more. And my experience tells me that most of the students would welcome this, because TP students are really nice and they welcome anything that would help them learn English and become better. Right. Then, and give the student a couple of tasks to evaluate their abilities in both skills and systems. And that's another important point. So it is not enough only to interview them. Try to give them a couple of tasks. And I would say written tasks are very important because, you know, writing gives you evidence. Yes, of course, you might give them a kind of a reading passage to check the reading skills, or maybe a listen activity to see how much good they are when it comes to listening. But most of the time, the most important task is a written task. Like what? Like write an email, a paragraph, write about a topic, and then they give you this back. This means that now you have two important sources. You have a recorded conversation, which will help you with the speaking, and spoken grammar and pronunciation and many other things and use of vocabulary. And also you have a written record. So you have, okay, an audio record and you have a written record. Fine, fantastic. And because you will need this for the assignment. Now, they could do these at home and send them to you via email. Like, don't worry, it doesn't have to be like on the spot. And that's why I would encourage you to exchange emails with that student you're going to focus on. Or if we're talking about a group of students, then do that with a group of students, right? And then you do not need to include these samples in the assignment. So good news is these samples are for you. They're not to be submitted with the assignments. They're just to help you. Right, let's continue. You can use writing and reading from the class tasks to assess their skills. That's a very important part. So along with the written record and the audio record, also you can sit and observe this student in a real class. What do I mean by this? Like, this student will be taught by your friends on the course or by your tutor. Now, while this is happening, you're sitting in the back, taking notes on this student's abilities in skills and systems. Right. Then, you should observe them in class and give them a questionnaire to talk about the learning style. So it's very important that your student has a questionnaire to answer, because you're going to use his or her answers in your assignment. So now, we talked about 4 important things. Number 1, a record of a conversation. Number 2, a written record. Number 3, observe their behavior and what they do in class to analyze their weaknesses and strengths. And number 4, give them a questionnaire. And I know that some of you are now asking themselves, what questionnaire is Shadi talking about? This is going to come in this episode, so I'm going to show you exactly what can be included in this questionnaire, right? Another part. Here, you then select 2 activities not included in the word count. And this is a very important part. Like, you're going to recommend 2 activities for your students. Now, most assignments are about 2 activities. Maybe other tutors might ask for more. Okay, so make sure that you read your assignments carefully. And remember that this assignment we're handling in this episode is just an example. Okay, not included in a word count, that this would not be part of your word count. For your learner, based on your findings. Now, these activities are not any activities. They're activities that are based on the weaknesses you discovered in your student or your group of students, right? and which are suitable to develop your students' needs. Fine. Let's move to the format. Now, what is the format of this assignment? I'd say use the headings given to frame your assignment. And this is very, very important. Now, in your assignment, when you read it, you will see that your tutor provided some headings for you. And in order to make your tutor's life easy, follow these headings so that your assignment looks organized and nice. And when you make your tutor's life easy, your life becomes easy as well, right? Good. Now, write between 750 and 1,000 in total. Okay, so that's the word count for the assignment. And write as paragraphs. So this is different from assignment 2. In assignment 2, if you remember in the previous episodes, most of our answers were in grids. And that's fine for assignment 2. But in assignment 1, most of the assignment will be in prose, paragraphs, and of course, accurate English. Because if your English is incorrect in the assignment, that's enough reason for a resubmission. Okay. Include specific references to reading in the body of your assignment. What do we mean by in the body of the assignment? Let me show you an example. Look at this one. Spanish learners find it hard to hear the stress change in English and cannot either recognize or produce the difference in English expressions such as the blackbird, blah, blah, blah. Now look at this. Swan and Smith, 95. This is what I would call in the body of your assignment. So because this part that is mentioned, the example about Spanish learners, is taken from Learner English by Swan and Smith. So this is how I put it in there. The reason why we do this is to avoid plagiarism. Right, good. And references also should be in your bibliography. Right? Like what? Like this. Swan and Smith, 2001, Learning English, COP, Cambridge University Press, the like. So in the body and in the bibliography at the very end of the assignment. Fine. Now, what are the assessment criteria for this assignment? Number 1, you need to show that you are aware of how a learner's background, previous learning experience, and learning styles affect learning. And this is something that we're going to check and see how you will do it through the assignment. Number 2, identifying the learner's language skills needs. And this is what Cambridge expects from you. Also, correctly using terminology relating to the description of language systems and language skills. Like you need to show those people that, oh yeah, I understand what I'm talking about and I'm using the right terms. Then selecting appropriate material and resources to aid learners' language development. So you need to prove to Cambridge that yes, I'm good at the process of selection activities. I can select the right activity for the right weakness. Okay, lovely. And providing a rationale for using specific activities with a learner, like this is the activity I recommend and this is why I recommend it. So you need to mention why this activity has been chosen. And finally, finding, selecting, and referencing information from one or more sources using written language that is clear, accurate, and appropriate to the task. Fine. Now, let's come to the big meat. Part 1. Student profile. Approximately 200 words. And don't try to exceed 200 words here. Someone might say, Shadi, does this part have to be finished at 200 words? I'd say check your assignment, because your tutor might have designed your assignment differently. And always remember through this episode that this is just an example. Okay, good. Now, when you see a title like this one in your assignment, then this is what you need to put on the assignment itself as a heading. So in the assignment, you go write part 1, student profile, and then you write. So it is clear for your tutor that you're covering all parts of the assignment. Okay, right. Let's see. Background. And in the background it says, a brief description of the student and her background with reference to previous learning experience. Then this is something that you should have some knowledge of. You need to know the previous learning experiences of your student. Not only that, but also their level. And this is easy because as long as this student will be in your TP group and you know your TP group level, so this is elementary or intermediate, this is not difficult. Needs. You need to ask why this student needs the course and what he wants to be good at. Also motivation, why he has joined this course, and preferred learning style. Right? Good. And all this, okay, can be taken from the questionnaire that you would give to your students. Okay. Then, let's move to the second part, their performance in the classroom. So you need to think about things like contributions, how much they share in the lesson, how they're managing, are they really good or they're left behind or they don't follow up with the teacher. And working with others, are they shy? They don't work with other students, or they're really good, they work with their friends, and also their progress. Lovely. So, let me now give you an example of how to answer this. So, if we come to previous learning experience, you might write something like that. Rami is a graduate from the Faculty of Medicine. You're talking now about previous learning experience. And then you can add how he learned maybe English in the Faculty of Medicine, what he did maybe in secondary school. You can add as much as you want, but remember that you have 200 words to cover and don't try to exceed that. Okay. When it comes to level, he's an intermediate student, for example. When it comes to needs, you might write something like that. Rami wants to sit for the OET exam so that he can apply for a job in Australia. He wants to master the 4 skills that the exam covers. Lovely. Okay. Right. Now, motivation. He seems very interested in the course and his dream of living in Australia makes him a hard-working student. Now, you covered motivation. Then we come to preferred learning style. He clearly expressed that he loved learning through videos and audios. Nice. Contribution. Rami always responds to the teacher's questions. He shares a lot of ideas in the classroom. Or maybe the opposite, like it doesn't have to be something positive all the time. And in managing, Rami is a fast finisher when it comes to reading. However, he's a bit slow in writing tasks. So this is how you go with part 1. Make sure that you cover every single thing so that you give, the impression to your tutor that you've just done your job and you talk to that students and you know everything about him or her. Lovely. Then we come to part 2. And part 2, as you see, it's about students' abilities in skills. Right. Students' abilities and skills. And we've got 4 skills. Got reading, listening, speaking and writing. And while watching this video, I really advise you to take a screenshot, of this part you see now. Some of you will say, Shadi, how are we going to talk about students' ability and skills? And it says here 350 words. Let's read carefully. It says choose 1 productive and 1 receptive. So you're not going to talk about the 4. You're going to talk about 1 receptive. And we have 2 receptive skills, reading and listening, and 2 productive skills, speaking and writing. Then according to this assignment, and as I said, Not all assignments like that, so you need to read your assignment carefully. Okay? You're supposed to choose one receptive and one productive. Then fine. Let's see. Reading. In order to cover reading, if you want, then you need to think of the questions provided for you here. Can they access text adequately for the level? And when I say access text adequately, right, do they face a lot of difficult words? And these difficult words stop them from reading a text? How do they find information, meaning of words in context? Do they keep going back to dictionaries? Type of questions they answer for comprehension. Like they're good with answering, questions about main ideas, but they can't answer questions about details. Then if you think about reading, try to answer these questions. Now, if you want to think about listening, then do they need to hear things repeated? Like when you're sitting there in the class, observing them, do they keep asking the teacher to replay the tracks that they can't hear? Did you notice that maybe while they're listening to answer a question, focusing on a specific information, they can't pick anything? How would you know? When you look at their answer sheets, there will be nothing or maybe one answer out of 5. So all these are clues to you. Do they understand the listening material for this level? Are they good at listening for specific information? And it goes like that. Speaking. Are they accurate and fluent? Do they speak using a range of structure or quite simple? Do they speak in broken English or is it quite fluent? And again, all these questions will help you, especially also when you're listening to the record of the conversation. Writing. And we said before that you will give them a writing task. Then when you look at it, you need to answer these questions. Look at the writing and analyze for their ability. Is the writing accurately punctuated? Is their handwriting legible or is it cursive? Can they write in complex sentences? And the list goes on. So don't forget to take a screenshot of this when you're trying to analyze the productive skills or receptive skills. And don't forget the last comment down there. Give specific examples. Like what? Like say, when you say, Rami was not very good with reading for details. Well, it's fine to say that, but you need to go on. Keep going. Tell us, how did you know? So you might say something, while he was answering a task, blah, 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 and you explain that task and what lesson was it, and because this gives credibility to your writing and it shows your tutors that you've done your job. Right, good. Part 3, students' ability in systems. And again, 350 words. And here we've got 3 things to cover: grammar, pronunciation, and Lexis. And it says what? For this section, you should use the errors grid to help you record and analyze their errors. And my friends, let me say something. I'm going to show you an example of a grid that you can use in your assignments, because grids in this part will help your tutors so much when they're marking this assignment. Okay. So we've got grammar, pronunciation, and Lexis. And I'll show you now how I dealt with each of these. Let's have a look at the grammar grid. Look at what I said here. I've got type of error, and I said tense. So the mistake was in tense. Example, I haven't seen him yesterday. Correction, I didn't see him yesterday. And reason, so this is how it should look like. In Arabic, there is one structure for the language functions of both past simple and present perfect. This confuses Arab students. But look at this one. Use of negative deduction in the past. He mustn't have been there. And instead of saying he can't have been there. And then the student overgeneralizes the use of must in the affirmative form and uses it in the negative form as well instead of can't. So when you write your students' weaknesses, mention the type of the error, give example of what they have produced wrongly, correct it and give a reason. And don't forget that before the weaknesses, you need to mention what they're good at, whether we're talking about skills or systems. So what they're good at first, and then you analyze their weaknesses. Then we have the Lexis Grid. Example, a mistake here in collocation, like I used to play Kung Fu. Correction, I used to do Kung Fu. Reason, in Arabic, the equivalent of the English verb play is what is used with martial arts. Therefore, Arab students are confused due to mother language interference. Now, another mistake, word choice. He was so nervous and kept shouting at me. And the correction, he was so annoyed and kept shouting at me. The explanation, in Arabic, there is a word that sounds like the English word nervous. However, it means annoyed. This is why many students use nervous when they are supposed to say annoyed. Interesting. Lovely. Now, pronunciation. Type of error, diphthongs. I go to school. I go to school. That's a mistake. The correction, I go to school. Reason, in Arabic, the diphthong O doesn't exist. This is why many students tend to use the monophthong U instead. So instead of saying go, they say gu. That's something you can mention in the assignment. Another example with consonants. I want to be like you. And the correction is I want to be like you. In Arabic, the consonant sound P does not exist. So Arab students tend to use its voiced version B, thinking it is the same. Good, lovely. Now, part 4 in the assignment, which is actually about recommending activities. Activities with a rationale. And it says 100 words. So to say, why 100 words only, Shadi? It's because the activity itself is not part of the word count. But remember that you need to write a rationale for every activity. Now, how many activities? In this assignment, it says, focus on 2 different problem areas for your learners. One from system and one from skills. This doesn't have to be the same in every other assignment out there. As I said, this is just one example. Okay? Now, find one system activity and one skills activity that will help him or her develop and improve in these areas. You can select from either your course book or other resources. Make a copy of each activity, make it look presentable, write the source and reference to the handout. And it says here, please do not copy a whole page, just the activity. Why? Because it happens a lot that some candidates just go and photocopy a whole page. If you do that, you will get a resubmission, no doubt. Right. For each activity, say why you chose it and how it will help your students. This is the rationale. Now let's see some examples. And an example of a grammar activity. And I used English grammar in use for this one. And as you see, it says here, are the underlined parts of these sentences right or wrong? Correct them where necessary. And if you notice is that I've lost my key, I can't find it anywhere. Okay? Right. Have you eaten a lot of sweets when you were a child? And the correction, did you eat? So obviously, this is a comparison between present perfect and past simple. Why? Because this is an error that I mentioned before. Remember, all the activities you recommend in this part have to be about errors you mentioned. So you cannot come up with an activity on an error you didn't mention previously. And this is why many tutors ask candidates to resubmit assignment 1. It's because they do that. They come to the activity part and then they start handling errors they haven't mentioned in part 2 or 3. Please don't do that. Stick to what you mentioned. Right? Good. And the rationale, we can say something like, this is a good grammar activity for Rami, as he is confused between the usage of present perfect simple and past simple. The activity focuses on this area and helps students understand when to use each structure accurately. Fine. An example for a Lexis activity. Good. And this time I used face to face. And the activity says, work in pairs. Which of these adjectives do you know? Do they describe positive or negative feelings? Then check new words. And then we have relaxed, nervous, pleased, embarrassed, angry, annoyed. Remember, I mentioned before that Rami had a problem with what? Nervous and annoyed. So I made sure that my activity focuses on that, right? And then choose 6 adjectives, make notes, and then work in pairs. Fine. And then I provided the definition referred to here because it says go to page 127. So this is page 127 now. And then the rationale is this is going to be an effective activity for Rami. He's a bit confused by the different meanings of some personal adjectives as the grid shows in the case of nervous versus annoyed. This activity provides the necessary information that would help Rami with this. And you can say that it provides the student with the definitions and then it gives an opportunity to use these adjectives in a conversation. All that stuff is possible. Now, pronunciation activity. Look at this one. And I used English pronunciation in use by Mark Hancock. And look at this activity. It's first read the conversation to the end and then write the letter B or P in each. Listen and check and then follow up. Play the recording again, pausing it after each of Sid's lines. You say Joe's lines before listening to him saying them. Fine. Now, this is going to be a good activity for Rami, as he has a problem with the P versus B. The activity relates meanings to sounds. It helps recognizing the difference between both sounds via listening. And it also provides pronunciation training through practicing the dialogue line by line. This is the rationale. Good. Now, reading example. And imagine that Rami has a problem with guessing words from context. Okay? So, if I notice that this is a problem for Rami in reading, then I would recommend this one. Can you guess the meaning of these words and phrases from the context? Check in your mini dictionary if necessary. And then he's got a passage and he's got these words. So this is on the weakness, exactly. And the rationale would be this reading task is going to be really good for Rami as he has a problem with guessing words from the context. The passage is appropriate for his level and age, and the topic will be interesting for him as well. Right. Then listening example, listening for specific information. Example. And I used here English Unlimited. And listen to the second part of the conversation. Tick the things they need for the salad. And I provided also the listening track so that my tutor can see everything, right? And then this activity is going to help Rami with listening to specific information. The activity focuses on a specific food ingredients that Rami needs to pick in order to answer correctly. And an example for writing. And let's assume that Rami has a problem with coherence. And coherence is organizing ideas in a piece of writing. And then I used American English file and read the movie review, number the paragraph summaries below in order 1 to 4. And then here is the passage 1, 2, 3, 4, and he's supposed to rearrange. And after that, after rearranging, the question is, write a movie review about the last movie you watched. Make sure that your writing is coherent and well organized. So I would say this will be a helpful activity for Rami, as he has a problem with organizing his ideas when writing. The activity provides Rami with a model to organize before writing his own. Fine. And let's go to speaking. And let's imagine that Rami has a problem with giving directions. And I'd say, this is the activity. I'm again American English file. You're a tourist in Boston. You're at South Station. Ask B how to get to the places below, as you see, right? And I would say, Rami has a problem with giving directions in English. He pauses for a long time trying to find the words. This activity will provide him with good practice on that topic. So now, my friends, let's move to collecting data through observations. And we said before that you will need sometimes to be sitting in a classroom watching your students or your group of students. But a lot of candidates ask me, Shadi, watching for what exactly? What things should we observe? And that's a very important question. I would say, what kinds of activities do they seem to prefer? Are there any activities they seem to dislike? How do they react to working with others in class? Do they contribute to pair group work? Who are the stronger, weaker members of the group? Note down examples of good language used. You need to talk about their strengths as well. Which topics do they seem to enjoy or not like talking about? Note down any pronunciation, grammatical, lexical errors the students make. Sounds, stress, intonation, tenses, you name it. Observe the students' listening and reading abilities. Are they better at gist or specific reading, listening? Is it necessary to pre-teach vocabulary? Do they worry about words they don't know? That kind of stuff. But what about the interview? What kind of questions would you ask in the interview or informal chats with the students? And I'd say a question like, how long has he or she been learning English? Does he or she like learning English? What is his mother tongue? Is English second or third language? Does he or she have any experience of learning another language? Does he or she have any specific aims in learning English? Now, what does the learner do for a living? Is this the first English learning experience? Have they learned English before? Where? How long? In their previous learning experience, what kinds of methods were used? What did they enjoy, not like about their previous learning? What do they like doing in class? Which areas of their English do they feel they need to work on? What do they find easy, difficult to do in class? Now, all these are very, very important questions to be asked in the interview with your students or your group of students. People who usually receive a resubmission on this assignment, this happens because of, number one, not covering all the aspects or all the areas listed in part one, and or being too general in part one. Like you say something like, you covered his previous experience, but you don't talk about his preferred style. You talk about your students' style, but you don't talk about your students' needs. So make sure you cover everything in part one. Also, focusing on problems that aren't appropriate to the level of the TP group. Describing activities in part 4, which do not address the areas for development outlined in part 2 and 3. So, as we said, if you talk about a pronunciation problem with a p sound, don't go in part 4 and recommend an activity for the VE sound, while you haven't mentioned that this was a problem in the previous part. So consistency. Not providing a clear rationale for the selection of the activities. Failing to attach reference copies of the activities to the assignment. Don't talk to me about the activities. Show me the activities. Creating your own practice activities which aren't based on any published materials. No. In this assignment, it's not your time to design. You need to go to other sources and select from them. We don't want to see your own designing now. This is level 5, not level 6. Now, at the end of the assignment, make sure that you include a bibliography, reference copies of the 2 practice activities, and a final word count. So we came to the end of this episode of CELTA Insider, my friends. And remember, if you have any question on assignment 1, I'll be down there in the comments. Leave your comments and I'll be responding to you. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.